Trump released the JFK files, and let's see what's in it. I have not reviewed this yet, so I don't know, but this is what's being said about the JFK files.
Welcome back. I'm Austin Westfall. Well, today was the day. Thousands of pages of previously unseen files related to the assassination of President John F. Kennedy were released today. Right now, over 1,100 documents totaling roughly 80,000 pages are visible on the National Archives website. This comes after President Trump's push to release the files, and standing by is a man who knows the history of the assassination well, presidential historian and author James Robinault. What have we learned today, James?
Well, Austin, we learned a lot about the CIA. Most of these documents are CIA-type documents. From their plan to try to assassinate Castro, Operation Mongoose is what it was called. Lots of detail on that, involving mafia figures to help them. It's an incredible story. To Jack Ruby and Oswald being seen in a nightclub, according to a CIA memo, weeks before the assassination, to all sorts of discredit on the single bullet theory that the ballistics people thought, that this just didn't happen back when the Warren report came out, to the CIA operation out of Mexico City and all the intelligence they were gathering on Oswald. So it is a truckload of information. It's going to take weeks to analyze. Their 100-page depositions in it. It truly is a real trove of information that begins to paint a much stronger picture that the CIA knew kind of what was coming and may have been involved in the group out of Miami that was the anti-Castro group that may have been setting up Oswald. So a ton of stuff.
So let me break this down from a C student's perspective. The same group that brought drugs and crack and cocaine and trafficked it here into the United States of America to ensure that it flooded our communities and decimated communities across the United States of America, especially urban communities. The same group that then arrested the people that they used to traffic these drugs inside of the United States of America is also involved in the assistance to the assassination of JFK. Got it. Got it. Thank you, Trump. Thank you, Trump. My interpretation of this conversation is the federal government via the CIA, who was probably one of the most demonic. They want to keep these government institutions open and just run business as usual. The same government agency that brought drugs and crack cocaine inside of the United States of America is the one that helped assist the assassination of JFK. Maybe it's a possibility. Who knows? Federal government may have played a role in the attempted assassination of Trump. Maybe that's why Trump decided that he wanted to release the JFK files. Maybe RFK Jr. wanted to get these files released. I don't know. But basically what this says is that we need to figure out whether we even need these organizations because they've done more harm to the American people than good. That's my interpretation of it.
Does this change the official narrative?
I think it will. I mean, I think what we're going to end, as I've said before, this is like a big jigsaw puzzle. And we have a lot of pieces in place. What we didn't know were some of the identities of some of these people and the CIA documents. Everybody's got a code name. So that's going to take a long while for people to unravel. But I think it's going to show that they were very active with the group that was entangled with Oswald in New Orleans in the summer of 1963. And the evidence is starting to look more and more like they were setting up Oswald and that the anti-Castro.
Somebody said, what do drug lords have to do with the president? That's like asking, what do gun runners have to do with the president? What do you mean? What do drug lords have to do with the president? Drug lords, trafficking, drug lords, all of these people, gun runners, historically, in my opinion, I believe that the most vile things directly ties back to some of the people that are making the decisions and deciding what laws are being put in place in America, historically, man, if you don't think that, listen. Forget JFK and them. We can just go back over the last 4 years. Over the last 4 years, family, we had a migrant crisis that nobody, and I mean absolutely nobody, in the United States of America asked for. I felt so bad for Democrats because y'all had to scramble around the issue and act like it never happened. But it was right there in front of our face. You couldn't fly into Chicago without seeing migrants sleeping on the airport floor. You couldn't fly into Boston without seeing migrants sleeping on the airport floor. Dog, if you don't think that that is directly tied, and this is just my theory, this is my assumption, I cannot prove it, obviously, but if you don't believe that that is directly tied all the way up to the top, you are crazy. You are crazy. Man, I would never want to be a president because the type of stuff that you probably know as a result of it is insane. Insane. You're telling me that we don't have the ability and the capability? Bruh, we got every single known technology. We know where all of the new codes are. We know alien technology. You telling me we can't stop the flow of fentanyl across the border? You telling me we can't stop the influx of migrants across the border? You telling me that we didn't know where the 300,000 children were during the Biden administration? Seriously?
Group or the people who might have pulled the triggers. So I think there's a lot here to work with, a lot to analyze. And as you know, because of Paul Landis's revelation that he found the bullet in the limousine that you and I have talked about so much, that tends to prove there was an ambush, that there were multiple shooters. This will then start to give us a better idea of who might have been involved.
Yeah, so let's back up on that. So for people that are watching that haven't watched our interviews,
that's why don't nobody want them audited in the
why
federal
do you
government.
feel it is appropriate to question the actual story, and you know what? I will say this too, by the way. The official version of the story is that Oswald was the lone gunman. So why do you feel like it's fair to question that theory?
Yeah, I think that the main thing is that when Paul Landis found the pristine bullet behind where Kennedy had been sitting and Jackie had been sitting, it showed that that bullet had only gone superficially into his back and that it fell back out. That means that the bullet didn't go through him into Conley, which is the official version. And, one bullet caused all this damage, which nobody ever believed. The problem is Kennedy gets hit, and within a split second, you can see that Conley gets hit. So there's not enough time for Oswald, who has a bolt action, to shoot about 3 seconds, load and shoot again to hit Conley. So there had to be multiple shooters. And once we know that there's a conspiracy. Once we know there's a conspiracy, then the question is who was involved in it. But that evidence is pretty strong that there were multiple shooters.
And we haven't had a president to release the files until Trump got in office. Ain't that something?
You have seen of the documents. Are there redactions?
No, I haven't yet seen any, and I've seen people write who've been through a lot more than I have that they haven't seen them yet. I think they really did take off the redactions. And again, this is going to help put together these pieces of the puzzle, because you have these various people who are identified in Miami. You have the people identified in Mexico City. And now you're starting to put all this stuff together to see what the puzzle looks like once you put those pieces in.
So I got to ask, this is something that you and I have talked about ad nauseum. I mean, the assassination happened in the 60s. Here we are in the 2020s now talking about this. Why did it take so long for these documents to be released?
That's the question. Why did it take so long?
I think the answer to that is that when the Warren report came out, President Johnson and Hoover in particular were very much trying to end the controversy and not spark World War III. They were worried that this was going to be blamed on the Cubans. They were worried it was going to be blamed on the Russians, and they were not willing to risk nuclear war over all of this. So they very much pushed the Warren Commission to get it done, blame it on one person. And at that point, the Warren Commission came out with a report that started to fall apart almost right away, but a lot of people still hung on to it. And the only reason that it's taken all these years is that the CIA convinced president after president that there were still people alive, there were still operations that they needed to protect. And it's only really in the last year that we finally have somebody saying, well, enough of that. Let's see all of it. It cannot be that we are going to destroy people or operations 60 years later. But it's going to be embarrassing, which it is, to the CIA.
So basically, we need to possibly dismantle the CIA, and we need to revamp all of these different government agencies to not be operating not in the best interest of American people. I think that the federal government for a long time has been super corrupt, and we finally got somebody in there to drain the swamp and just release the files and don't even have an opinion on it. He just released the files so that everybody else can draw their own conclusions as a result of it. Shout out to Trump, man. Shout out to Trump. Make sure y'all hit a like for the algorithm, subscribe to the channel, and turn on your notifications.